All right, I just got to let everybody know that I let you know that I'm recording the interview.
Okay.
All right. So my first question is, where do you practice at?
I practice at Abington Memorial Hospital on the orthopedic unit.
Okay. And what roles do you assume?
I assume basically all the roles that are in the white paper. I do patient advocate. I am an educator. I'm a clinician. Um, I'm a coordinator. I do outcomes management, data analysis, hats of all sorts.
And are there any additional responsibilities that come with that?
Well, I maintain a cohort, just like, you're taught in school. I maintain a cohort of the most complicated and complex patients on our unit. I review all the labs and the documents. I read through all the charts. I meet with all the physicians. I round with the ancillary staff, with the physical therapist, with the social workers, the case managers, the nurses. Then I meet with the patient and the families. I make sure that they understand their plan of care, make sure they understand what the doctors are telling them. That often doesn't always communicate or they understand that. And then I do staff and patient education as needed, kind of. So I do that throughout the day.
Okay.
And then I do all the outcomes for the floor. So all the nurse-sensitive indicators I kind of manage to make sure we're keeping up with them.
And do you face any barriers that make your job hard?
In the beginning, when we started, which I've now been a CNL since '09, so I've been CNL for 4 years. When we started, it was really hard because I was a staff nurse on the floor that I originally worked on, and then became a CNL on that floor.
Oh, that's tough.
That was really hard. It was hard in the beginning. The staff did not really take to me well, kind of telling them what they needed to do because I was their staff nurse the day before. So it took a good year for them to really respect me for what I was trying to accomplish on the unit. But now it's really good. But that was really a hard barrier, and it was a new role in the hospital, so nobody kind of knew what to make of me or why I was doing what I was doing.
I got to be honest, I've yet to meet a CNL. You're my first one, so it's actually a very new role for me too.
Fun. Yes, that was a barrier in the beginning.
Let's see. It says, what sources are available to assist the nurse to implement the role? So what resources do you have?
Well, when the role first got implemented, when we first started, our chief nursing officer at the time, her name was Barbara Wadsworth. She actually had read about the CNL position in the VA hospitals in the South and how they were starting it there, and she wanted it in our hospital. So from what I actually understand, and Pat could probably tell you better than I could, but I believe that our CNO, Barbara, went to LaSalle University and went to Zane Wolf and asked her to implement the curriculum.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and our CNO said, I can provide you students if you guys can provide the curriculum. And from what I understand, that's how the whole program came about at LaSalle. So the first graduates out of LaSalle were from Abington. I was the second class that came out from that.
Oh, I didn't know that. That's interesting.
Yeah, and our CNO was like super engaged and very, very focused, and she was really helped to implement it in Abington.
Wow. Okay, so what requirements for credentialing then for the organization?
To be a clinical nurse leader at Abington, you have to have your master's degree or you have to be in your last clinical semester of your CNL degree. We have hired people that have not graduated from the CNL track only because there's only so many CNLs that come out of LaSalle or Drexel. We're the only two schools that have them.
Okay.
They have hired, as long as you have a master's in nursing, so they've hired an educator or a nurse practitioner into the position, but we can't officially call them clinical nurse leaders because they don't have that certification behind their name. So we call them clinical nurse liaisons.
Oh, okay.
So that we can call everybody a CNL. Yeah.
That's clever.
Yeah, but you have to have basically to have your master's in nursing before you can get into the position.
Okay. Let's see. It says, how does a nurse contribute to safety and quality initiatives within the organization?
So all of the CNLs in our hospital have a scorecard, which means that we have about 6 or 7 nurse-sensitive indicators that we're directly responsible for our unit. So that's like falls with injury and pressure ulcers and urinary tract infections, all the nurse-sensitive indicators. So I'm directly responsible for, I don't don't necessarily collect the data if someone else collects it, but if my data is showing that our, falls rate is going up, then they come to me and say, Megan, what are you going to do to create a program or do education on the floor to try to work on those outcomes? So I work very closely with my nurse manager in, well, what do you think I should try to do? Or what kind of education do you think I should try to do? Or should I work on a project to make these things better? So we do all of that for safety. We also meet with Abington. Our hospital has a safety quality office with people who are always looking at everything safety related in the hospital. And we meet with them once a month to make sure that we as the CNLs are we are an extension of them, so on the floors. So we're more clinical, where they sit in the office and talk about all the things in the hospital, and we meet with them to make sure that we're on board with their goals.
Oh, that's wonderful, because you know how things get lost when you're not at the bedside.
Yeah, and it's a lot of communication with us saying, well, that's not going to work because you guys don't know how the reality of the floor is.
Right.
Let me tell you what is going to work. So it's nice when we get to sit in the meetings with the people who are making decisions to say, let me tell you the barriers to that safety problem, or why this is happening. I can tell you why it's happening because I've seen it, where they, don't know, they don't sit on the floors.
Wow,
yeah.
That's wonderful. So you get to see both sides of the situation. Wow.
Which is a lot of respect. You get a lot of respect from both sides. The nurses like it that they have an advocate that'll say, how stressful the floor really is. And the administration likes it because they can hear from our standpoint, from a professional standpoint, yes, this is the reason why this is, or without having the nurses tell them.
So the nurses bring a lot of stuff to you then?
Yeah.
Because that's exactly what I would do.
They bring everything to me.
That's pretty funny.
Yeah.
That's a lot. That's a lot of pressure.
It's good though, because now, like I said in the beginning, they had a really hard time, respecting me or knowing what I was doing. And now that they see what I've done to make the floor better for them, they know the value of my role.
So you're still on that original floor then?
Yeah.
Okay.
4 years. Yep.
Wow, that's wonderful.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a really good position. It's nice to be able to sit with patients and talk them through what's going on, because the nursing staff doesn't have time for that. They're,
right.
Running around trying to assess and give meds and get post-ops. And so when I have the time, especially with a really complicated patient, someone who, has 7 different services following them, or a confused patient whose family has no idea what's going on, I have the time to sit and talk to all family members, to the patient. I can call the rehab facilities. I can facilitate for them. I can call doctors and make sure that they're doing the right thing. I catch a lot of things that would otherwise fall through the cracks.
Wow.
Labs that don't get picked up, labs that don't get ordered. A cardiologist might hold a beta blocker, and then the orthopedic service doesn't do it. So I have to call them and make sure they read the consult. There's a lot of coordination. Is really
you sound busy.
Yeah, right?
I actually have my own personal question for you. Wait, were you nervous when you went to school for this position because it was so new?
So I didn't want to go to school.
Nobody wants to.
I did not want to go back to school. And like I told you, Barbara Wadsworth, our CNO, really wanted this role. So she went out and handpicked people who were charge nurses on med-surg floors. And she had asked me, and she said, I think that you'd be really good at this. And I said, Barbara, I don't really want to go back to school. I have really no interest, but thank you anyway.
Wow.
And she said, but I really want this position in the hospital, so I'll pay for your entire schooling and your books, and I'll pay for everything.
Oh, my God, I'm so jealous.
I said, well, I guess I can't say no if they're going to pay for my master's degree.
Wow.
So I did go back for that reason. But I wasn't nervous about it. I didn't think I wanted to be in school.
Right.
But when I heard about what a CNL was intended to be, it kind of sounded like something I already tried to do on the floor with a slot of 6 patients.
Wow.
So I liked the idea of, being somebody, being the point person, being the coordinator, somebody who had time to talk to patients, who I could go to administration. So I really, once I realized what the program was about, I got way into it and then was all excited. And,
yeah, that's really impressive. Wow. Yeah, because like I said, I never really heard of the position until I started taking this class, and wow, that's really interesting.
Yeah, it's a cool position. It's very different than other masters. I didn't want to be a teacher. No offense, Pat.
I agree. I hear you.
I didn't want to be a teacher. I didn't want to be an anesthesiologist. I didn't really want, all the master's degrees in nursing, I wasn't interested because they were taking you away from patients.
Right.
It was taking you out of the bedside to go somewhere else. And this was the only one where I could stay on a clinical floor, keep my clinical skills, but still have that background of I'm a master's degree nurse, which could open a lot more doors for me. So
that's wonderful, because I think that's what holds up a lot of people from going back, because you don't know what you want to do, because you don't want to leave the bedside, but you feel like you're being pushed to go back for your master's degree.
Right. Everybody wants you to have your master's. And I still to this day, like, I don't want to be a nurse practitioner. I don't really want to be like, they're like doctors. I don't really want to be like them.
Right.
And I don't want to, like, at this point in my career, I don't want to teach. So I didn't want to do all the things that a master's had. And this was the only master's degree that I thought was something that I felt like I was already doing. And now I had a master's degree to prove that I was trained to do it.
And you didn't have to pay for it.
Really, you're right. It was really lucky. I mean, I kind of ended up at the right place at the right time. So now we have people going back to school who, and our hospital will pay for you to go back, but they won't pay for full time. They'll pay only so much amount a calendar year.
Right.
So
right.
it was nice back then when, Barbara was like, I'll pay you anything you want. I'll pay for your books. I want you to go back to this position.
That's wonderful. I didn't even know anybody had leverage for all that.
Chief nursing officer of a hospital.
That's wonderful. Wow. That's a really impressive story, I gotta admit.
Good. Well, enjoy it.
Thank you. I appreciate you interviewing with me.
Not a problem. And like I've said to Pat and to any students, if anybody in the class has any kind of questions, feel free to give them my email address. I know what it's like to be the student. I know what it's like to be working full-time and being a student. So if you have any questions or need to talk to me again, please reach out to me. I'll definitely